Now, there's a principle out of that that applies, and that while we had the support of the Vice-Chancellor, we were all right. You've got to have the top support. As you know, and indeed, we're right here in Pitcher Partners, and we've got a joint activity with them where we're teaching not the MEI, but the M applied innovation and entrepreneurship, which is the Adelaide equivalent of the Swinburne program. But we're actually doing it here in Pitcher Partners. Their staff are the students, and we're running a cohort through, and we'll run a number of cohorts through to get to that Masters.
And they've got the commercial reality.
Now, why do they want it? Why do they want it? Well, they'll tell you. They've looked at MBAs, good MBAs, best MBAs, but they're general management, and these people are not about just general management. This particular company specialises very much in family business, and indeed it's Australia's largest business accounting a consulting company with family business, and indeed amongst all the finances they're number 5, so they're pretty big. And they want to be sure that their staff are not just accountants, they're the best accountants, but they don't just want them to be accountants or project managers. They want them to be able to give advice, consult to the business, the family businesses, to help them grow and see opportunities. So you can see why we came back in on this. In fact, we've just finished, we're almost finished the first course in the opportunity. So there you are. That's a very encapsulated view of where we got to. And indeed, I think we can say that we were the first Masters program in the world. And we maintained a very, very good recognition across the world. And of course we also set up the first research conference in the region. We've had the first Hall of Fame, Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame. You know, all those things are all part of it, but they are all supportive to the program.
What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? The thing that makes me proudest, and this might sound a little odd, but it does, the most exciting thing is after you've taught, or you're in a teaching schedule, you know, going through a course, and you teach something, and then a week or two later, or whenever, the student comes back to you and says, "Hey, we were able to apply that in our business." Now, that gives me my greatest joy, because then you know that you've transferred knowledge, which is what you're on about. It's not because your knowledge is good. That's not what I'm saying. You've transferred knowledge which they are then able to apply and use in their circumstance. And of course the benefit of that is that they actually do grow businesses. And it's not only businesses, because the other side of the coin that I get excited about is into the social area.
With your wife, absolutely.
Yeah, well, she did her PhD on that. But it is social entrepreneurship, and as I think you're probably aware, I am doing it because I'm involved with this at the moment, but we're setting up a foundation. The foundation's really set up, it's got to be put in practice, which is called Oz Entrepreneurs Sans Frontières.
Yes.
And that is again taking the great joy and the great pool, because we've got about 1,800 graduates now out of the Swinburne program, and many of those, I've checked them in the classroom, would love to be able to give some weeks of their time to participate in a development of growth potential, business growth potential, social entrepreneurship potential in developing countries.
Yes.
Utilising the principle, it's not us giving them money, it's actually giving them the skills and the capacity to grow their own resources. And that's where we're going to go. I
find it so frustrating when people perceive entrepreneurship as business and money.
And they don't, and as you rightly say, in fact when we started this program, I have to acknowledge, we were going to call it the Master of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And that was 1989, 88 when I was drawing it up. That was what it was called originally. But that was the days in 89, beginning of 89, through the Holmes Accord and Bond and Skase and all those money manipulators who gave such a bad press to entrepreneurship. We had to take it out of the equation, and we used enterprise purely. Enterprise was the wrong word, but it at least removed us from that colour. Now, of course, that's gone, and entrepreneurship is now seen as a very important driver. So it's, you know, it's back in the program. So it's, and the other side is that we've never, that I've been proud of anyway, is not just being stuck in the university, because I've always said, and indeed it is, entrepreneurship is much more about practice than theory, even though with good understanding of theory you can enhance your capacity in practice. So in '94 we formed a joint venture with Ernst & Young, and we actually moved the teaching and the school from Swinburne into the offices of Ernst & Young. And we were there for 5 years, not 5 years, 4 years. When we were required, the university required us to come back to the campus because they set up the graduate school, or what do they call it, the Swinburne Graduate School of Management.
Yeah.
And they wanted us because we had some, what I might call, we were an icon, I guess.
The niche.
Yes. So that was where we came to that change. But now you see, the interesting thing is, we're now negotiating the same deal here with Pitcher Partners. Only I'm an adjunct now at Adelaide, and Swinburne lost their way, as I will put it, and so I'm now an adjunct over there, and this program is done in association with Adelaide, although the director of their master's program over at Adelaide is a graduate of Swinburne, Alan O'Connor.
He was my first convener.
Well, there you go, you see. So he's over there, and so we're carrying on. Yeah.
What would you say to people, because there's so much entrepreneurial education that's out there by people who have purely practiced and it's anecdotal, and they're charging enormous amounts of money for education that is not underpinned by any theory or any university or PracAdemic knowledge. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I get very disturbed about it, not because of a status thing, but because they are limiting their capacity to be truly effective and to be sustainable. Now, I say that because I'll use another discipline to demonstrate that, and it applies to engineering as well. Psychology is a classic. There are many people who try to teach counselling skills with no underpinning of the theory. Now, it's not that you're going to become a theoretical person who just wants to sit in books. That's not what you're on about. But the better you understand the way in which the physical, spiritual and mental parts of the body operate, the more you've got an understanding to know what tool to use when you are counselling somebody who presents with these different, or some different set of circumstances. It's the same thing in engineering. We have different levels of engineering. The so-called professional engineer who has done the degrees and got the knowledge, if I can use that phrase, cannot even gain membership of the Institution of Engineers unless he has had practical experience. So no people who are associated with knowledge learning will, well, at least anyone who's worth their salt, are going to say it's only knowledge. You've got to be able to have practice. Doctors are the same. Look what we do with doctors. We put them through all this high education, but then they have to go and be an intern for a while they pick up the practice. So you've got to work the two together.
I get so frustrated with people that teach their own journey as one man's journey.
Yeah, well, that's...
Whereas I've learned from 1,000 men's journeys going along, and that's where the learning's
And that's why
lie.
the emphasis within our program, and you know, we're picking up, good entrepreneurs see ideas and pick them up and then apply them. And that one that I picked up was at Harvard with the case study method. Now, case studies are not war stories. They're not cookbook menus of how to do things. They are narrative with a lot of material which gives you understanding of what has happened, but more particularly seeks your input as to where would you go, how would you handle the situation, how would you gain a better outcome.
So
now that's the case. Case studies are all. That's why they're all about learning. I mean, Harvard, in its master's program, teaches wholly by the case method. Now, I looked at that and decided that would not suit the type of students we would attract at Swinburne.
We're a little different.
Because we needed to give them some sense of some lectures to provide some material, some core material for them to take advantage of, and then the case studies, which is what we've done. But it's a great example, and as I say, engineering, medicine, psychology, nursing's another one. All of these will always demonstrate that understanding what we know about life or products or whatever it happens to be facilitates and helps better judgment, better decisions, more encompassing, more holistic decisions than if it's just something that you only have had the experience in. That's terribly limiting and dangerous.
I agree. Now also on the weekend, the Australian Financial Review had a double spread, or maybe it was Monday in the education section, about the value of the MBA, and it had 5 different people's perspectives from universities. The word entrepreneur or entrepreneurship and innovation was not mentioned once in the screening. How do you perceive the future with MBAs versus MEIs?
Well, I don't know whether I'd ever use the word versus, because they actually do capture different markets.
Fair call, yes.
And MBAs have a very valuable resource, but I didn't type this. I didn't initiate the word, but there is a very interesting book out on the fall of the MBA.
I've not heard of it.
Oh yeah, what's the name? It's, I can't think of the author. It's a very famous author. In fact, it was one of the books we had for a while. Now, why do they say that? It's because of the narrowness of the teaching. They're not criticising the concept of an MBA. You see, what's happened is, and you see this when you get into financing, they believe that you've got to do more and more theory of economics to be a good manager.
And equilibrium economics at that.
Equilibrium. So that's a fundamental. The same thing they do with HR, and so it goes on. Now, the point that I make is that when you go and look at the surveys that have been done in the USA, and when we do some of our own work on intuition data, what you find is that 2/3 of the decisions made by top CEOs, the people that these MBAs are supposed to be emulating, is actually made on non-cognitive processes.
So that brings us into your research and energy and intuition, and that's so much a part of entrepreneurship.
Well, I believe it is, and it separates it off. And that's the point, is that we're not arguing that people throw out the data and throw out their capacity to look at the data and to look at the numbers. That's not on. But when they come to make a decision, they use more information available to them through their intuition, through their experience, through a sense of what's happening in the world today and where it is. All those things, it affects their emotional intelligence, as they call it.